I guess I'll just get to it. It's like the obvious question that everybody is asking, which is why is, there were these billboards that said the end is near because why is the end near? Because when Alphabet Land came out in 2020, I mean, it was such a return to form. Like all the critics loved it. It was in my top 5 albums of that year. Everyone was so like, there was actually a line in The Guardian that said something like this record is better than it had any I don't know. It was better than anyone expected or something. So you
Better
came
than it
back.
was better than sliced bread. No.
Sliced bread's. I mean, I'm kind of neutral about sliced bread,
Yeah,
but
I think you just slice it yourself and it's fine. Why is that such the gold standard? Anyway, I'm sorry.
Alphabet Land was better than sliced bread and better than a lot of other things. It was a great record, and so I felt like there was momentum with that record. So, and you hadn't put out a record in so long. So why is this one going to be? Why is Smoking Fiction going to be the last?
You want to go first, Exene?
I don't really have an answer to that question. It is an educated guess because no one can actually predict the future. I mean, what if there's another pandemic and I'm in Austin and I can't go home and I'm staying at John's house for 3 months and all we can do is write songs and play music and we come up with 20 songs? You don't know, but I mean the educated guess part is that it's hard to do. It took us a while to do it. If we started working on songs now for another record after this tour is over in 2025, it would probably take us a year to get ready to go in the studio, and then it'd be 2026. I just don't think at that point we're going to be able to do it. It's just, it's too hard.
Yeah.
What's hard
I
about it? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
uh, I would say we didn't set out in 2023 or the end of 2022 really to say, okay, we're writing the last record. Here we go. It it developed, and as the songs and the lyrics all came together, it it seemed to be apparent to me that with the reflection in the lyrics, what it talked about, the way it was summing things up, it's like, yeah, this probably is. We'll probably or possibly record some uh, a, for a benefit record or something or other. And but it's a huge campaign to write a full record. And I've also been saying that records are sort of passé. I mean, full LPs. Most people just do a single, then they put that out, and then they do something else. And so, but I enjoy that process. I think that's a really valid process. Like you're going to have an art exhibit, you take some things that people haven't seen, and they seem to hold together, and then you make some other work around it, and then you put it up on the wall. And with a record, you say, "This is my life experience," and it's through the filter of the last 3 years or however long that it took you to make the record. And you go in there and you have this energy that just goes zoom, and then you have to, as you're doing that, you're starting to figure out what the artwork might be, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like it coalesces into this record of that time.
What I like about Smoking Fiction, particularly the single Big Black X's, obviously it's nostalgic, particularly Big Black X's, looking back at all these kind of like, Hollywood landmarks, most of which don't exist anymore. But it's not nostalgic in a way that's kind of like how maybe some other bands would be, where it's like, oh, the good old days were so much better. Couldn't we just go back to 1978? Oh, I wish it was 81 again. How do you like strike the balance of basically being nostalgic and embracing your past and looking back at it fondly or not so fondly, but like, yeah, not basically sounding like a bunch of like old people saying things were better
Well,
back in the day? I don't mean it
because
in a
if you,
mean way, but a lot of people
no,
do
no,
that.
no, if you're a writer, you're already writing about the past the second you sit down at the typewriter or the pen or paper. Because let's say you're in a relationship for 30 years and you break up and you write the whole records about that. Um, what
Yeah.
you're doing is you're giving someone something for themselves to listen to when that happens to them. And part of this record and that song in particular is for the people that were there so that they can go, yeah, that was great. Oh, I remember that. You know what else I remember? Did you remember when this happened? And it gives them this kind of fun thing. And also it tells people who weren't there what it was like. It would be nostalgic if it wasn't humorous.
If I
I don't think we ever get, we're always funny about what we write about, except maybe, I mean, even the unheard music in some ways, like the setting the trash on fire, that's kind of funny. I don't know, we're writers, we write about what happened.
Nostalgia, a wistful or excessively sentimental yearning for return to or of some past period or irrecoverable condition.
So no, we're not nostalgic.
So it's like I was saying, it's reflective, not nostalgic, because it's not putting it through this uh rose-colored lens
Right.
that that is that's phony. So and also I think there's a healthy dose of acceptance of getting right with something that happened in the past. It's like in Big Black X, it's like uh or I'm sorry, The Way It Is. Yeah, we did fall down on the street like a drunken mess. But you have to accept that because if you regret it, then you're going to be racked with this really negative uh, opinion of yourself or of what you did or something like that. It's like, you know what? You did what you did, you accept it and you make amends and move on and then you're like healthier. Um, so yeah. And and that's why again, it seems to be a good capsule of what we've done. If somebody who is 20 said, what was it like in 1979? I only have 3.5 minutes. Can you explain it? I would say, listen to this song.
Absolutely. I have this, since we're talking about, and I'm putting quotes, I'm doing this, but Old Punks was the name of a sketch, the sketch on Everybody's in LA that had Exene, you were on it, and a lot of your peers were on it. And I want to ask about this because it was badass. When Fred Armisen asked everybody, who's the most punk among you, you were the only one who did this. You pointed at yourself. I agree. But I want to
And
ask you
after,
why you did that. Like, because
well,
everybody else was saying someone else or saying Fred.
they filmed this for 12 hours, and you cannot imagine the amazing conversations and interactions. And we played music for like a half an hour all together and jammed with me and Penelope Houston and leaving all making up lyrics and singing together and telling each other, you jump in, while Mike Watt was holding it down with the bass and DJs playing. Everyone was playing these made up songs based on these lyrics we had been asked to
Mm-hmm.
write. And it was so incredible and so much fun. We had never any of us done that in all these 50 years. And so I think it's interesting that they had us there for 12 years with all this, I mean 12 years, 12 hours with all this footage and only used like 2 minutes.
I know.
And they
We got
didn't
to
tell
get
us
the
that,
director's cut of that.
oh boy, they should, man, that stuff is priceless. But then the other thing was they didn't tell anyone it was called Old Punks till after we got there. And that's kind of dismissive in a way. Uh, I think they had a gold mine and they didn't make the most of it. But I think, having said that, I'm so grateful that they did that because what an experience. I will never forget that. That was one of my favorite punk rock experiences of all time. So people don't get to see what we got to see, but that's true of punk in general. They only got to see 1 minute of what we were experiencing for years. So I didn't watch it because I don't watch stuff like that, but I'm glad they did it. It was really, really fun.
It was pretty great, but I want to ask why, when the question was, who do you think of all of you guys is the most punk? And we had all these legends you just mentioned that you pointed right at yourself. And at least the way they edited it, it didn't seem like you hesitated.
I don't do anything with any kind of, I am reckless and impulsive, and I do things spontaneously all the time. It's one of my character defects and one of my strongest points. So I just did what I thought. He asked the question, I answered. I don't think about things very much past just the second that it takes me to answer.
It's interesting because you talked about how you didn't know that was going to be the title of the sketch, which I think
Yeah.
is kind of mean and kind of rude that they didn't tell you that. But it kind of reminds me of something that John, you said at the Grammar Museum the other night. You were sort of talking about misconceptions of punk, or at least of that first wave of punk, that that basically people didn't want to be, the fallacy is that they didn't want to be successful, they didn't want to be on the radio or whatever, and you guys kind of didn't. I mean, you kind of admitted that's something you aim for, and with the exception of the Go-Go's, I would say that you're absolutely the most successful band to have come out of that LA scene. So can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about why there's that idea that, like, punk is not supposed to be popular, or that punk bands aren't supposed to want to be widely heard or whatever?
I don't know, maybe because it makes good press. It's a good angle. Um, and it became pervasive after a certain a couple of scenes, like I was saying with Minor Threat and the what was the band after that?
Fugazi.
Fugazi.
Yeah, which I mean, I think Ian MacKaye is righteous as hell, and he's done. I heard some stories about him telling the sound man to take all of his shit off the stage because he was a real dick through the entire like a show with 4 or 5 bands, and then Minor Threat or Fugazi was playing the last song, and he was just telling him, don't do this and don't do that, and it's my system and my sound system. Said, take all this shit off the stage now, because now it's our stage. And he just yelled the lyrics with the amps blaring, which I think is awesome. Charging $5 is awesome, but I mean, we don't live in that society.
But that
Yeah.
was something, I mean, I don't know if it's something you aspired to when the band started in the late 70s, but
Well,
it's
here's
at
what
some point.
happened. Here's what happened is it was a really small scene and it was real precious and incredible. And we knew it was amazing and wonderful. And a lot of people just wanted to keep it for themselves. So if you started to get more popular or new people started coming in, people were like, no, this is my scene, kind of like the My Beach thing for surfers. And that benefits a few people, but it does not benefit the many. And I think it's really important that everyone gets to hear this music, like they finally are now in the age of like the internet and stuff. I think that I wanted everybody to hear those bands. I wanted all those bands on the radio, which is what Bad Thoughts is about.
Mm-hmm.
And I could not believe it, but I think it was mostly because we were so, especially me, oh, screw these people and screw the radio and blah, 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 and mainstream and corporations. The people that were in charge were being challenged because they wouldn't welcome us in. We weren't welcomed in like the 60s bands to radio because what had happened was everybody had died, Jimi Hendrix, etc. And so it became suddenly classic radio became this graveyard of what had been, and they weren't going to change. It was like, we're always going to play the Allman Brothers, we're always going to play the Doors, we're always going to play 60s music, and we're not letting anything new. And if those people hadn't died, I would think that the radio and culture in general would have naturally progressed and morphed into a new generation of people on the radio, but they had to codify it and keep it. They had to keep it. It was like a tragic PTSD kind of thing to hang on to that.
Mm.
That's my theory. And so when we came out and we were like, we want to be on the radio, screw you. They were like, no, you're not getting on the radio. And they became more hardened. We became more hardened, and we all became at odds, and we could not get on the radio, and people couldn't. And I think also it wasn't pretty music. I mean, when you listen to Fleetwood Mac, it's beautiful songs with beautiful singing and playing, very polished. And we were the antithesis of that. And you couldn't play Rhiannon and then play Los Angeles back to back. It just wasn't going to happen.
See, I grew up in Los Angeles, so to me, I heard you on the radio all the time because I listened to K Rock. So I kind of didn't, it was only much later, in life that I might have realized that X was such, I'm wearing my Angeline shirt, I'm representing for, like, Hollywood today. But, I have a certain book that someone on the Zoom co-wrote with Tom DeSavia, which is sort of more fun than New World, obviously, which is sort of about when, you were talking about roots music and, well, you were talking about the Allman Brothers, but, like, I feel like X kind of bridged the two worlds, especially with, like, the later music that you did when you started incorporating some of that root stuff. And I don't know if you guys get total credit for that. I mean, I feel you ushered a sea change in LA with that.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like the second record, Wild Gift, had a lot more roots influence.
Okay.
Like Year One is very surf orient, it's like a surf song, and In This House I Call Home I think was influenced by the Gun Club and what they did. Um, and with the Knitters, we were just kind of, we saw Green on Red and Rank and File and Maria McKee, Lone Justice, and we thought, well, this is all part of the same soup, and so we did the Knitters for fun with Dave, and then when Billy got fed up with doing tour after tour and record after record, and said, I'm going to take a break, and Dave Alvin came into the band, then we naturally gravitated to more roots sounding music. So.
And case in point, I was just at the Troubadour a few weeks ago, and Dwight Yoakam presented you. I filmed the whole thing, all 11 minutes of Dwight Yoakam presenting you with I guess a key to West Hollywood, a proclamation, like made you the king and queens of West Hollywood. I'm not exactly sure what the honor was, but it was pretty cool. Can you tell me how that came to be? You've gotten a lot of honor, you've gotten a lot of keys to the city and a lot of honors in the last few years.
Well, we did get that LA day, which was the greatest thing
Mm-hmm.
because I got to throw out the pitch at Dodger Stadium and all that. Um, Dwight's great. I mean, we've known him since he first came to LA to play music, and I mean, he's kind of like larger than life, but still a real person. But I don't know. It was just I thought that was a thrill just because Dwight gave it to us, more than anything.
We
Mm-hmm.
did,
Yeah. Yeah,
we did
those scenes were very broad, like Los Lobos, the Knitters, the Blasters, Dwight, the Go-Go's, all those people were part of the same scene, which is insane.
Will the Knitters continue after X is sort of, I mean, not totally over, obviously. You've mentioned that you'll do one-off shows or maybe one-off songs, but what about the future of the Knitters? Because you've been doing some shows lately as the Knitters.
we did one which Mojo booked before he passed away. And we might, but Dave is really busy, and he and Jimmy Dale are touring. They're playing Austin as soon as we get back, which I can't wait to go see. So yes, the Knitters may do more stuff, but with X, we'll just do 20 shows a year and maybe set up in a bigger city like New York or Atlanta or Chicago and play 2 or 3 nights. I mean, this is my dream, rather than playing 75 shows and going from town to town to town to town.
You
Um,
you you talked the other night at the Grammy Museum about Exene. You actually were talking about it in a very frank way about how at some point touring in a van, it's just not very glamorous or fun anymore, if it ever was. But it's certainly at some point, it's not fun anymore.
Well, it was never easy. It's not easy. I don't I once in a while I'll have a friend come with me and ride along for 2 shows in Southern California or ride along for 3 shows. And they invariably, and of course all my friends are younger than me, go, how do you do this? This is so hard. Because physically it's just really, really challenging. People don't understand. They think that, you get in some kind of bus, you go to a city, you get taken to a nice hotel where your luggage gets brought to your room, you eat a really nice meal, and then 5 hours later you walk into a club and play. That has never been my experience ever on one day of touring. It never will be. It is just, it's like it- it's very blue collar. It's just like physical labor and not luxury at all. And I think people want to have a glamorous view because they want to imagine that they're in that scene. It's them, what it would be like. And I mean, the dressing rooms in most of the clubs we play now are pretty nice, and there's a bathroom and there's sandwiches and some Diet Cokes and some beer and stuff. But I mean, some of these places that we've played in our career, I mean, there's no bathroom, no food, just like, I don't know. I love it, or I wouldn't have done it all these years. And I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying that as you get older, if you have any kind of financial stability whatsoever, even if it's minor, and you can make a choice between really killing yourself or having some level of comfort, you might want to just go, I don't need to make this much money. I only need to survive.
John, do you
yeah.
have any
Yeah.
thoughts on touring as the years go by?
Uh, it is grueling, and luckily the hour and a half that you're on stage makes up for all the privation that you experience. But it is I have a desire to do things that I like rather than things that I don't like. So figuring out ways of touring or ways of making a living that's that's more positive uh, is attractive rather than saying, well, this is what I've got to do and I've just got to buckle down and go, and keep your head down and keep moving forward. And it's like, no, you don't. You do have some choice.
So,
Yes.
Exene, you mentioned Fleetwood Mac. You just mentioned them when you were talking about
Yeah.
like kind of other bands. And obviously that's a band that kind of gets cited a lot as a band that had, well, in their case, more than one couple in a band, and like all their fraught drama is a big part of their mythology. But see, obviously you guys were a couple a long time ago, but it seems like the bond you have is as tight or even tighter than it ever was. And yeah, I'm just curious about the dynamic of how you were able to sort of survive as an ex couple in a band all these years. Because it's kind of rare. I mean, I could cite some other examples, like maybe Rhythmics or something, or the White Stripes, but maybe, but it's pretty rare actually. And it seems like, I don't know, I'm just curious about that journey.
Well, I think it's not just me and John, it's Billy and DJ too. We've all been together for almost 50 years. That's really hard to do. I mean, I know these guys like the back of my hand. I know everything about them. And I know over the years how I've changed as a human being, how they've changed as human beings, how we all get along, what our interactions are, what our triggers are, what our dynamics are. And you have to learn how to coexist with people. I think it's an incredible gift to be able to know people for so long and not just walk away. I mean, it's really brave. It's like in the old days before divorce was easy to get. People had to figure it out. They had 6 kids and they didn't like each other, and they had to figure out how they were going to make it work. It's not always easy, but it's a noble thing to do. It's a real character building thing to do. And also I think because of the creative part of our relationship and just who we are as people, that's more important than being married or anything else. And we were very young when we got together. I was like 20, 21 when we got together. So I'm 68 now. I think, it makes sense that you would, people when they come together young, do other things at some point. But I think it is nice that we're all still together, and it is hard sometimes, but it's rewarding.
I agree with all that. And I'd add that your closest relationships are just part of your own personality. You're you're projecting something of yourself, or you're having someone else's personality project on you, and either you're going to press the learn button and figure out who you are, what you'd like, what you want to be, or what you want to encourage, what you want to nurture, or what you want to change. So if I have a problem with somebody in a relationship, then it's like, well, this is a problem that I've got to figure out, because they're just amplifying something that may be so. And I agree that, like, seeing my relationship is more of a creative, spiritual bond that is unbroken, won't be broken.
Was there ever any talk at the time when I mean, this was obviously years ago, but when you guys were um partying romantically, like that it would be kind of like how Sonic Youth was, that it would also signify the end of the band? Because it didn't. I mean, but was that ever like on the table that
I don't think I didn't feel like there was a choice, that I valued the band and felt we could work out the difficulties between us personally. I valued um, the creative partnership more than just being a couple.
Exene, you were about to say something?
No, it's you just do the best you can at the time. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. We did Ain't Love Grand, and then we got Tony and Dave in the band. I was having a baby. I was pregnant the whole time. John's wife was having a baby. We were just trying to survive the 90s, which were a nightmare, and get through all that stuff. It was a really tough time between 85 and like 98 was just like navigating a wasteland of like, I don't know, maybe we go down this street, maybe there's food there. I don't know. It was like really weird at that time because the music in general, like pre-Nirvana was such a weird place to be musically, and there was such a doldrums in music and audiences and with babies and stuff. It was hard, but we did a lot of other things. We did solo records, we did folk stuff, we did poetry. I mean, there was all kinds of ways to get through that time, and we survived it. And that was a tough time to survive, and we did it creatively and we did it personally. So, how we did that, I don't know. Just like you look back on your life and go, how did I do that?
Yeah, the other thing that when you say how do people survive the different personalities and different dynamics of things is you just do it step by step. You don't sit down and say, well, I'm going to break this down into certain steps. You just like flounder around and you just kind of, well, this might help and maybe I can understand that. And you do a lot of soul searching. And if you work on yourself, then you can work on your relationships.
Your bio for Smoking Fiction, actually, I'm looking at it right now, says, I'm paraphrasing, it basically says the friction between the four of you, any friction has actually been at the heart of the music, and that you're at your best when it's the four of you together. Which isn't, can you elaborate on that?
Oh, I feel like any band that's worth listening to has whether it's obvious or in the background, they have distinct personalities that create this hybrid and the personalities uh, rise and fall with different moments of the music or their history, their development. Um, yeah, it's not just one person or two people, and then the other people are side men or women.
It's interesting because, Exene, you were talking about the 90s being hard, and I know you were referring not just personally, but professionally, and, you mentioned Nirvana and stuff. And that reminds me of something you, John, said at the Grammy Museum. One of the audience questions was about like your influence, hearing your influence in later bands. And you said you didn't hear another band out there that sounded like X. And I was like, I think he's right. Actually, there is no other. I mean, certainly there are lots of bands who would name check you as an influence, including probably a lot of those '90s grunge bands. But yeah, it's interesting to me that you can't actually be like, I don't know if there's ever been a band that's been like, where the review says reminiscent of X's Wild Gift era, or like it doesn't. Do you have any theories as to why? Is it just like what you do can't be replicated, really? Except no
I think
imitations. Go ahead.
I don't think you can replicate what we do because it's none of it's conscious and none of it's contrived. So it's not like, oh, this is that pattern that they do. Because you're not going to know what we're going to, I mean, like the way I sing, for instance, who does that? The way John plays bass, nobody's going to play bass like that. And of course, no one can do what Billy does. No one.
Or
And
DJ.
or DJ, but I mean, I think that when I think about Billy, he's such a amalgamation of things, and he's so particularly Billy. It's not like he's just a generic rockabilly guy, who just does retreads of the rockabilly era. He is just so unique, and I don't, we'll see. Maybe in the future, maybe AI. I suppose there could be I hate to even bring that up. I suppose you could do a AI X, but I bet that wouldn't even work. I bet AI can't even make an X.
Um,
You held up More Fun in the New World, the book, and Bill Morgan, who made you don't have to you don't
I'm
have to
just getting you some, available where all great books are sold.
very nice picture by Laura Levine in New York. Is Bill Morgan, who did Unheard Music, they had like Scurus Pictures made 3 prints or something of the movie because it was all 35 millimeter, and they had to send the prints from one city to another, one art house to another. So they, would play in Philadelphia for a week. And then it would have to, then Detroit would say, well, we want it next, and la la la. But it would never get held over. And he writes about this in that book. In Seattle, and this is in 88 when it was out and doing its thing, or 87, it was like they held it over week after week after week. And Bill was, what the hell is going on? And then he spoke to Kurt Cobain at some point much later, and he said, oh yeah, we all went down and saw that movie like 3, 4, 5 times.
Awesome.
That was the scene that was bubbling in 87, and then they're, blowing up the world in 89. Yeah.
And then look who ended up joining Nirvana at the very end. Your
Yeah,
peer, Pat Smear.
that was like the lottery is real. You know?
Actually, it dawned on me a few years, maybe 3 years ago, I guess 2021, the Go-Go's got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame the same year that that Foo Fighters did. So in a way, there was Germs representation that year at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because Belinda was in the Germs and obviously Pat was in the Germs. I don't know if I'm sure you've been asked this a lot, but like, there's a faction of people there who want X in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't know if that's something that even matters to you guys, but what are your thoughts about that ever happening? Because there isn't a lot of representation of your era of LA in the hall in general. And there have been all these other athletes.
Yeah, it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But then if you see that the people they put in first, I mean, I think there's some people that still aren't in there from the 50s. Is Big Joe Turner in there? I don't know. Is he? I don't know. There's so many. Are Don and Dewey in there? I don't know. Like, there are so many incredible 50s and 60s artists who are rock and roll, who invented rock and roll, who aren't in there yet. But pop stars are. So the way I see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is it's partially a nod and respectful, and I'd love to be in there, but it's also very much has to stay in a kind of popular mainstream, like most things. It's a corporate entity. But I do love the museum, and they're very, very great to us. And the museum is different because the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum in Cleveland, if you go in there and you're in a band and you're just touring and you're a roadie or whatever, a merch guy, you get in free. And they have that kind of mentality. So that's all I know of them. I don't know anything about the nominating process or I never follow who gets in and who doesn't. But I think it's nice. It's always nice to get recognized.
Yeah, I think you should be. Go ahead.
I would be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for Billy's sake. I think it would mean a lot to him.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you feel I do. I feel there's been an X renaissance just in terms, I've mentioned, the LA Day, the Dwight Yoakam Award. You had your whole like top floor of the Grammy Museum was an X exhibit a few years ago. Like, these books you put out and, one of them was up for a Grammy for spoken word. Like, do you feel there's sort of a ball rolling and that maybe Smoke and Fiction with all the excitement about this kind of being the perfect bow on it? Like, do you feel there's been a renaissance that, a new wave of appreciation that maybe you guys didn't get before?
Yeah.
Who thinks about stuff like that, though? I mean, we've been doing this for 50 years. I mean, who thinks like now it's going to happen? Now we're going to get popular. Now people are going to finally understand us. It's like, we don't know. And I don't care. Oh my God, I'd be so worn out if I thought about that.
Fair enough.
As you get older, you either you have a choice to turn to be grateful or to be bitter. And I'm really grateful that we've chosen a more positive path. At least I can speak for us, I think. And sure, it's better. I'm glad that we're still around because I see in the New Yorker where they have profiles about an artist, usually a woman artist who's 90 some, and she's finally getting her due And she just said, I've been doing this since I was 23. What took you so long? They're not saying what took you so long, shaking their finger, and they're just like, yeah, okay. I'm glad they're doing it to us, for us who at our 60s and 70s rather than when we're dead. But who cares?
But
I do care. Not who cares, but it's like if that's the case, great. And that's one of the reasons that Tom DeSavvy and I wrote those books, is because we wanted to get a lot of different voices telling this history in a way that was broad and a community and sort of democratic about this, to paint the picture so that the history was right, so the history was correct, rather than just doing some sensational stuff where people were just talking about how drunk they were and how fucked up things were. We wanted to have, the kind of juicy part of it, which is the creative side and the community side and the cultural side of what we might have added or contributed. Yeah.
yeah, but I know people do like that juicy stuff or whatever. Do you ever think X, the story of X, would make a good biopic? I mean,
Yuck.
Yeah,
no?
it'd be probably as good as the Germs movie.
Uh, I didn't actually see that one.
Oh, Pat Smear had a New York accent. It was
What?
so the guy that played Pat Smear, I don't know his name, but he was, a young actor from New York, and he was talking like Pat, Pat Smear. Hey, what's up? Kind of shit. It was like, oh Lord. And then the person who played Lorna was, like this hot chick, and I mean, Lorna was pretty and everything, but it was just like it was all wrong. It was all Hollywood. No, it would be a crappy one.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
even know who would play you guys. I guess John, you could play yourself. You act. Exene, you could play yourself.
Get a
I
lot of
would never want to be in a movie or want to watch a movie about X. I think that the unheard music is a really good antidote to the decline because it shows a little bit broader of a picture of who we were and who the scene was in general and what it was like business wise in those days. I'm not a big. I like some movies, but I wouldn't really care too much if that happened or not.
The
yeah.
only thing I would like about it, if it was done right, is sometimes those biopics do a good job of recreating what the town or what the era looked like. Like they'll transform. I would like them to like transform the Sunset Strip to make it look like back the night that, for the trash can burning scene or whatever. Like if they could turn it back to that and like change, the Viper Room back to, I guess it was probably the Central then. I don't know. Like I
Well,
would
that
be
would
into
be
that.
a, you know what you would have to do. It would be like, it would be like, it would be impossible. I guess you could do it with CGI or whatever that is, but everything in that movie is gone. So I don't know how you would recreate that. I mean, the whiskey's still there, but it doesn't really look the same exactly. I don't know how you would do that. That would be very hard. I think you'd have to have just mostly interiors.
Well, I know I probably need to let you go because you guys have such a busy week. And once again, I want to thank you for doing
And, and also,
this interview with me.
the
But that brings back to
Zoom
big.
call is winding up too.
What's that?
Zoom call is ticking down.
Oh, I got Zoom Pro. We're fine in that way. I know you have a lot to do. So to that saying that landmarks are gone, that brings us back kind of to the beginning with Big Black X. Is how do you feel? Like it seems like every time I go on social media or whatever, I find out another store or club or some kind hotel, like some kind of landmark, you know, even like just finding out like, a restaurant or Fred Siegel or whatever that, like is closing. Like it just seems like so much of the LA that I grew up with that you guys grew, became famous in like is gone. And, just I know you just said you aren't nostalgic people, but how do you feel about
I don't like it. Here's the thing. When we started touring in like 79, 80, and we toured across the country, and then 80, 81, 82, we were really going from town to town. You could drive through towns and it looked like 1920 in that town. It looked like 1950 in that town. Like all the neon was there and the old bars were there and the people that were walking around in the cars and it was frozen in time. So I think from like, up until the early 80s, the country kind of looked like it always had. And there were diners and it was cool, right? And the architecture was still there. So this is a worldwide phenomenon. I think it's also the idea that we need to get rid of everything from the past so that nobody knows what happened, so that we just shoot people into the future and they're just like, I don't know, I guess I'm doing this now. But it's also, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why things get torn down. I think that the thing I have to come to terms with, and I still have a love for LA, is that it's not my city now. It's a bunch of young people there. And they're wandering around in this wonderland of LA, going to restaurants and doing things that we never had the chance to do because there weren't things like that. Then there was just the old stuff. And they're loving LA. And for them, it's the greatest city. They're so happy to be there. And there's all this stuff happening. They don't know that there used to be something else on that spot and it's gone. It doesn't matter. I think the thing is with life is if you're living in the moment, everything's gone. So what difference does it make? Like I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm not at some place I used to be. It's just weird. The time is weird. But yeah, it's sad. I think I'm a big person. I'm into history and antiques and life and the Americana and stuff. So I do get sad about that. But again, it'll be gone anyway.
What's your fondest, like a place that no longer exists that you have like the fondest memories of, or you wish had never been torn down or whatever?
Well, Johnny's Steakhouse on Hollywood Boulevard, or Nicodell, that restaurant that was on, that it became a parking lot. I mean, like there were some great, amazing, old school places, kind of like how Moose and Frank's is now, but not as expensive. There was a lot of that kind of stuff, the Snow White Diner or Cafe,
Yeah.
Hollywood Boulevard. Just the general seediness, but relative safety of the whole Hollywood experience was really cool. Just it was just like a quaint, cool. It was Hollywood. It
Yeah,
was
but
it
I
was
would say,
Hollywood. It was amazing. Schwab's drugstore.
yeah, the thing that appealed to me coming to LA from Baltimore is that everything was disposable and everything was like constantly renewed, which was sort of exciting because we were young.
Mm.
And I still feel that excitement when something new that's actually quality and good rather than just new and like fast fashion or just completely disposable and actively ruining the planet. So that's the balance. But Los Angeles is famous for that.
And
I think
it's
that's part of the West and being disposable.
Los Angeles is
There,
also famous.
there's
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
There's an old story that I read because I'm a big like silent movie person and stuff. There's an old story about how like when people first started getting all this money in Hollywood off the movies and stuff, they hired the set designers to build their houses, but they only know how to build like sets. So like the walls would fall over and stuff.
It
And
was
that to me is so typical Hollywood, where you have a Tudor looking house next to a Spanish looking house next to a French chalet looking house and a German Alpine house on the same street, like you still see in Beverly Hills, but that
was
they were built by people that were just like, it was like, we don't know how to do anything. If things falling apart, Hollywood is very disposable as opposed to like the East Coast where things have been around for 300 years or something. So I remember John telling me that was part of the reasons he liked being there, because it was just, it was like a set. It's like a set. It's not going to last forever, right?
Well, some things. Well, the legacy of X will last forever. You're LA royalty to me, and I know the end isn't near, so I'm glad to know that there'll still be chances to catch you guys live and stuff.
yes.
I think so. We'll see.
Awesome. The last question I have for you before I let you go, and I had to ask, is how do you feel about your name is everywhere now because Twitter is X now? I see the word
Uh,
X every day all over the place, and I get excited from it. I'm like, oh, what did X do? X, and then I realize it's Twitter.
Well, we were very much ahead of the curve on that, weren't we? Because X didn't become kind of ubiquitous until recently. But even then, after that, it was. I mean, we were always having to stop people from using our name to like call themselves X. But I think, it was an unknown quantity. It was like it had a lot of symbolism, and it was just a bad idea and a good idea to call ourselves that. And who knows what'll happen in the future? But yeah, it's kind of neat.
They didn't have to go to you. Elon Musk didn't have to go to you and like
No,
ask
because
permission.
he's not a band. If Elon Musk started a band and he wanted to call it X, we would have really been in the money. But
It's
he
a
can call anything, you can call anything X unless it's a band
yeah.
Okay. Well,
or music.
I don't want Elon Musk to start a band. Let's not have that happen. But I am so glad that you guys started a band almost 50 years ago. And I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation. So thank you again. When this interview goes out, I will tweet it. I will put it on X and let everybody know. And congratulations on just a fabulous career. I mean, you guys are
Oh,
LA
thank you so
heroes.
much. I
Heck yeah.
appreciate you very much because I appreciate what you do and your insights and everything. And I can't wait to read the book. I haven't started yet. As soon as we're done playing shows and after me, but I'm going to start that book. Thanks for doing that too.
Permanent Damage: Memoirs of an Outrageous Girl by Mercy Fontenot and me. I have it over there.
Hold on. If we're
Oh,
holding up books,
oh my.
here's your book. Let's hold it up because
Oh,
it's on my table. I'm getting ready to read it. Yeah. Yeah, we all help each other out. That's the whole
oh
thing.
my
Bye,
God,
John.
this is amazing. Oh
John's
my
got a
God.
book too.
Hold it. Oh, this is so sweet. Mercy would be so happy. I'm gonna cry. Thank you so much, guys. This is amazing. Wow.